This is developing a dynamic series, lesson 17. Um, so far, we've worked on the admin panel, and everything looks good aesthetically, except for our form. Um, the top navigation looks good. The side navigation looks good, and granted, it could look better, but we're only using CSS. So for just using CSS, that's pretty slick. However, the form needs a lot of work, and what we're going to do in this video is work on the not only applying some style to the form, but we're going to kind of come up with a style overall that we can use across the admin for these forms. So we can do a little more copying and pasting and things like that to make things easier as we start working on the blog and the gallery and such. So we need to go into Dreamweaver, and in Dreamweaver, open your admin folder and go ahead and open up your index page like we do normally. We may or may not work within this at all during this video, but like I said, I like to have it open just in case. And then in the content folder, open up the pages.php. Alright, now that that's open, scroll on down to the form area down at the bottom of the page, and the way we're going to format this is using tables. And I had a discussion with a person the other day about using tables on this exact thing here in a private session. A student was wanting to know how to get these to look better by using CSS, and there's a popular misconception that once we started using CSS instead of tables to lay out websites, that we just don't use tables ever again. And that's not true. Tables are still good for a couple of things. One, a table. If you actually need to make a table on your website, you should use the table tags. Don't waste your time trying to build a table with CSS. That's not what CSS is for. CSS is there to make things easier and look nicer. But when it's necessary, do of course use the tables. And in this case, there is nothing wrong with using a table to format a form. And so, assuming that everybody is familiar with the table tags, give yourself some room here, and let's just start them out with the table tag. And format this a little bit, bring this closing table above the form, and we'll kind of bump this out a little bit. And then we need to add some rows and columns. So let's flip back over to our browser, take a look at what we have, and for the top part of our form, we're going to want to have two columns, one for the label, one for the field. And I'll take this opportunity to explain why tables are good for this, because forms look way better when they're aligned a certain way. Right now it's kind of jagged. I mean, aside from the fact that it's all smushed against our navigation and everything, that looks bad. But the form itself, the fields, if they're justified to the left and the labels are justified to the right, then everything should line up really nicely. And if you can't visualize what I'm talking about, you'll see it, soon enough here. But so with that said, we're going to need to have a row with 2 columns for these first 2, and then the page body can be in a row with 1 column. We'll have a row for the label and a row for the text area, and then 1 more row for the Save Changes button. So flip back to Dreamweaver, and let's go ahead and just kind of start putting this together. So we need our TR for the table row, and inside that we're going to have 2 columns, which is TD. And I'm just going to copy and paste that. So we have 2. Alright, so since we can't see the page in front of us, we kind of have to keep it visually in our head. So this column right here is going to be this first label here, page title. And I'm going to go ahead and take everything from the label, or like the label tag itself and everything inside, and just drag it in there. And then what comes next would be the input. So we'll take everything from there and drag it here. So essentially each row is going to be the label and then the field. So what we could do is just copy this and paste it again. I'll just go ahead and change this to name, and then we'll delete this input here and come down here, get our input tag and drag it into that column. Go ahead and delete all this remaining. So now we have our first 2 rows, and what we'll do now is we'll create another row, yet this time we're only going to have 1 column. So if you know anything about tables, then the next step should be pretty obvious to you. When you're dealing with multiple columns in a table, then when you want to go and make a row that only has 1 column or less columns than the rest of the table, you need to make up for that. And to do so, we need to use the property call span, as in column span. So call span equals 2. So we want this column to span over 2 columns. If we don't do this, then we'll have a little bit of mess. It'll break up the table. So now something we can do here to save ourselves some time, we're going to use this same format for the next 3 elements: the label, the text area, and the submit button, or the save changes button. So let's go ahead and just copy this whole thing here, and we'll go ahead and paste it 3 times. So first we'll grab this label, toss it in there, then we'll grab the text area and we'll put it in its own row, and then we'll get the submit button. And we can clean this up, and we want to make sure we get some of the extra tags out of here. Now these hidden fields, it doesn't matter, those are fine. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and click on home again, and now you see things have changed just a little bit. It's hard to tell. It's very minimal. Things have gotten a little tighter. Now we need to use CSS to adjust a few things here. Let's go ahead and give this table a class. and we'll just call it gen form for like general form, if that wasn't obvious. And put your quotes in there. I missed that. So we've created that class. Now let's go into our CSS over here and make sure again you're working in the admin folder and not the root, since they look so similar. Open up styles.css and just go all the way down to the bottom. As I've mentioned before, we're going to start cleaning this up pretty soon. Let's go ahead and create a rule for that class. So the table itself, we don't really need to do anything to that specifically, but I'm going to copy that empty rule and paste it a couple times because we're going to affect elements within the table. So we want to mess with the rows, and we want to mess with columns at some point. So save and upload that. And go back to the page really quick just to kind of take a look at it to see what we can do. One thing I want to do is give padding to all the cells in the table just to kind of push things out a little bit. Everything's way too tight. And I also want to make all the labels justified right. So let's start with that. So actually we're going to create one more rule here. So I copied and pasted this rule here, and I'm going to add a label after that, so that we're affecting only the columns that have a label within it, and we're going to make those justified to the right. So text align is right. Save and upload that, but we're not going to look at it just yet. We want every column or every cell to have a little bit of padding, so let's give it a padding property. We want maybe just a little bit on the sides, and I don't know, let's just mess with the numbers. So maybe 3 pixels on top and bottom, and let's just do 3 all around and see what that gets us, and then we'll adjust from there. Save and upload. Now we're going to take a look at it. Let's go ahead and refresh. There you go. So we see it kind of filling out a little bit. Our label did not justify right, and that might be my fault. Let's, instead of using label, let's go back to our pages.php, and let's give the label, or the column where the label is, a class. Actually, let's stick to the same naming convention, so gen label. And let's go ahead and copy that and paste it here and there. Now we don't need it for this label because we don't want that one justified to the right. We want that one to stay over to the left, and we'll flip back just so you see. Yeah. So let's save that, hop over to CSS again, give this rule a class of gen label, and that should fix our issue. Otherwise I'm doing something wrong, which is rare. There we go. So everything's justified to the right there. And now it's making our page body label look a little awkward. So what I actually want to do is put some distance between these two just to kind of separate. So what I'm going to do for now is add an extra row. And just to be clear, this is actually going to be a temporary solution. So if you weren't, I kind of did that without telling you what I was doing. But I just copied the page body row here and pasted it. And I'm just going to go ahead and remove the label and just leave that empty. Save and upload. This is partially for trial and error. I want to see what it looks like. And also just to kind of, there we go, that's a little better. Just to put a little buffer there. Alright, so now that we have this buffer set up there, the next thing I want to do is go back into Dreamweaver, look in our CSS, or actually flip over to pages.php. If you remember the div, we have this whole right side column wrapped in. We have the class editor. So let's go into styles and let's mess with that, because we want to get rid of this here. We want to get some padding, or not necessarily padding, but a buffer here. So we're going to put a margin on the editor. And because I don't know yet how much we want to do, I'll just put in zeros for now, and then we'll mess with it. So we don't need a margin on the top. This is a pretty good spacing here. However, on the left side, let's go ahead and put a 20 pixel margin, and this might bump it down underneath the sidebar, depending on how big the wrap is around everything, but I don't believe so. There we go. And I'm actually going to make that 40 and save and upload. Alright, now we have that. Now I'm still not liking the way this looks with the labels. My original idea of justifying them to the right, I'm not going to go with that. So let's go back. So go back and change that to left, save, upload. There, that looks better. Now, this still looks, or the whole reason behind the table, when I first started talking about it, I talked about how I wanted everything justified to the right, and that's part of the reason why I use the table. But that's not the only reason. I wanted these fields to be aligned and things like that. So we still accomplished that. Now let's go in, and for the label, let's go ahead and make the let's change the font a little bit. Let's make it bold. So we'll do font weight and make it bold, and save and upload. And what we need to do now is go back and let's apply that general label class to the other label, the page body. So just kind of paste that in there. Save that. Upload. There we go. Now another thing we can do, and this is new to CSS 3, and you don't necessarily have to do it, but it does make your forms look kind of nice, and it's kind of a popular trend right now. But let's make a class, or sorry, make a rule that just affects the fields, or let's say input. Actually, sorry, if we do that, then we're going to affect the button too. So let's go over to pages and put the let's make a class for the input tag, and we'll call this gen input. And then let's copy that, and we'll paste it there. I would do it on the text area, but that's going to change when we put in the WYSIWYG editor. So I'm not going to mess with that. Granted, it's not going to complete the whole nice look to our form, but there's no sense in doing something we're going to undo in the next video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to round the corners, and when I do that, we're also going to get rid of the kind of default bevel or inner bevel, and then we're going to put a little bit of padding to make these fields not so tight. So go back over to styles, and we're going to do this a little differently actually. Get rid of this, and instead let's just do dot gen input. And the reason I'm doing this is because if we were to do it the way we had it, we would be restricting this style to any field that's inside of a table, and I want to be able to use this class even if we don't use a table within a form. So we're going to use the border radius property, and this works just like the margins and paddings. It goes clockwise. You can have up to 4 values here. So let's just start. We'll try like a 3 pixel radius, and I want that around the whole thing, so we'll just stick to that. And then let's do a padding, and let's make that, we'll give a little bit on the left to bump out the word a little bit, but I want to have more on the top and bottom, so we're going to do 3 pixels on the top. Yeah, 3 pixels on the top, and on the right 3 pixels. You know what, scratch it. Let's just do 3 pixels all around and see what that looks like. That might come out alright. It's going to get the point across anyways. So save, upload, refresh the page, and there you go. Now we need to change the border, plus we need to get rid of that bevel, and the rounded. I don't like the round. It's not round enough. So let's change the border radius to 5, and for the border, let's make it 1 pixel and solid, which will override the bevel. And let's just make it a some shade of gray. Let's just do all fives. And save and upload. Alright, so the roundness is pretty much where I want it. We might tinker with that later, but this border is way too dark. I want that lighter, so I'm going to go the opposite way, and let's do something like DF, 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 and that'll be a lighter shade of gray. There we go. That's a little better. Let's darken it up just a tad. Save and upload. There you go. We'll stick to that for now, and that'll look a little better once the WYSIWYG is in, so this doesn't look so generic. The only other thing we can do, which is really up to you, I don't know, up to you if you want to do this, but we can mess with the submit button as well. Let's go ahead and go to pages, and we'll give the submit button a class. We'll call it gen submit. Save and upload that. Hop over to styles. And let's go ahead and we'll copy and paste this here, this whole general input, and change it to gen submit. And we're going to keep everything except we want to make a background color. And we want that to be a light gray, a little bit lighter than the border. So now let's do EF, EF, EF. Save that. Refresh. There you go. Now you have a little more unique save or submit button here. We'll need to do one more thing, and that is, let's change the cursor to pointer. And actually let's add a hover state to this, so gen submit, and if you don't remember, this is considered a pseudo class, this hover here. Actually, let's move the cursor property over to that, and let's just make the background a little darker. So let's copy that line there, and we'll just make it DF, DF, DF instead. See if that's enough of a difference. Save and upload. Fresh. And now when we hover it over it, it works like a button. And that is the end of this. And that is the end of lesson 17. We're going to move into lesson 18 next, and that's when we start talking about the WYSIWYG editor that we're going to apply to this text area here.